If you talk to a structural engineer about testing materials, they'll tell you something really interesting. They'll say, you don't actually know what a steel beam or like a concrete pillar is really made of when it's just sitting there in the sun.
Right, yeah. On a nice sunny day, it looks totally fine.
Exactly. I mean, it looks solid. It holds its shape perfectly.
Like, it could hold up the entire world, honestly.
Yeah, but you only find out what it's truly made of when you put it in the stress tester.
Mm.
You apply thousands of pounds of pressure, like the exact kind of weight it was theoretically built to withstand, and suddenly all those microscopic cracks, the internal flaws, the real structural integrity, it all just gets exposed.
Yeah, because the stress tester, it strips away the illusion.
Exactly.
And, the pressure doesn't actually change the material itself. It just reveals its true nature.
That is so true. And that brings us right into our deep dive for today. So, welcome everyone. Today we're looking at this brilliantly detailed analytical article, and it's titled England versus Argentina, The Identity Crisis of English Pressure.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the events of last night's 2026 World Cup semifinal. But, we are going way beyond a basic match report here.
Oh, definitely.
We're taking the events of that game and using them to understand the psychology of pressure in elite sports. Like, why, when the stakes are at their absolute highest, do teams and individuals just revert to their most deeply ingrained habits?
Right. And I think it's important to clarify up front, this isn't just, a critique of manager Thomas Tuchel's substitutions.
Right.
I mean, obviously the tactical shifts are a massive part of the puzzle. We'll get into that.
Right.
But it's a much broader exploration of why a team completely sheds its identity at the exact moment they need that identity to survive.
Yeah, that's the core of it. So let's paint a picture of the first 70 minutes of this match, because the context is just everything here.
For sure.
For over an hour, England was outstanding. I mean, we are talking about a team that went toe-to-toe with the defending world champions and honestly looked like the better side.
They really did. They were matching Argentina physically, winning all those crucial second balls.
Yeah.
And tactically, their pressing traps were just springing perfectly. They were cutting off the passing lanes. Technically, they were keeping the ball in super tight spaces.
I mean, they didn't look out of their depth at all. They weren't overawed by the occasion, which is saying something for a World Cup semifinal.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It was basically a masterclass in modern proactive football.
And they deservedly led 1-0 through that just fantastic Anthony Gordon goal, and perhaps the most telling metric of all, in my opinion anyway. Lionel Messi was pretty much a peripheral figure.
Yeah, he was completely stifled.
He was largely quiet. He was forced to drop incredibly deep just to even get a touch of the ball, and Argentina looked, well, genuinely frustrated.
They did. For 70 minutes, England looked entirely capable of reaching their first World Cup final since 1966 just by, playing their game.
Right. But then the clock hits the 70th minute. The legs start to get heavy.
Yeah, the reality of a World Cup final starts looming just over the horizon. Basically, we hit the stress tester.
Exactly. The pressure gets cranked up.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the collapse, we really have to isolate the specific catalyst here. So Anthony Gordon, who has been absolutely terrorizing the Argentine defense all night, is taken off, and Konza comes on.
Right.
So England shifts from a back four into a back five. But before we break down the substitution itself, we have to look at the temperature of the match in that specific moment. Yeah, because the dynamic was shifting, right? Subtly but undeniably. Argentina was beginning to ask different questions. Messi was starting to find those little, pockets of space between the midfield and the defense that he just thrives in.
Oh, he loves those spaces.
Right. And Enzo Fernandez and Alexis McAllister, they were starting to dictate the tempo. They were finding their rhythm. And Julian Alvarez was making these relentless, stretching runs in behind the England defense.
You could just feel the pressure mounting.
Absolutely.
But I gotta ask, if you're in a cabin in the woods, right, and a massive bear is circling outside, isn't barricading the door and boarding up the windows the smartest move?
I see where you're going with this.
I mean, dropping into a back five to defend a 1-goal lead late in a knockout game, it feels like a completely standard, logical decision. Why is retreating inherently a bad thing in this scenario?
Well, that analogy actually perfectly highlights the trap of defensive thinking. Let's look at the type of bear we're dealing with here.
Okay, fair.
Against a weaker opponent, barricading the door absolutely works. The source actually notes that England successfully utilized a back five to defend a lead against Mexico earlier in the tournament.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, they basically invited Mexico to cross the ball, knowing they could clear it all day. Mexico simply lacked the individual quality, the precision, to consistently punish that kind of sustained pressure.
So they could scratch at the door, but they didn't have the tools to break the hinges.
Exactly. But Argentina is an entirely different proposition. Elite attacking players rarely need a second invitation.
Right.
When you drop into a back five, you're necessarily taking a player out of your midfield or attack to add to your defensive line.
Yeah.
So you are physically surrendering the center of the pitch.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're just handing it over.
Right. By retreating, you give Lionel Messi an extra 2 seconds on the ball. You give Enzo Fernandez 20 extra uncontested touches to just, pick his passes.
Which is terrifying.
It is. You give McAllister the freedom to orchestrate without a man breathing down his neck. So you aren't just boarding up the windows. You're locking yourself inside while giving world-class lockpickers 20 minutes of uninterrupted, pressure-free time to work in your front door.
Wow. Yeah, you're mathematically increasing the probability that they will eventually pry it open.
Precisely.
And the players, they felt this shift immediately, didn't they? I mean, Harry Kane admitted after the match that once England dropped deep and gave Argentina that unpressed space around the penalty area, the whole game changed.
Yeah, he said Argentina's creative players, quote, grew into the game.
They gained confidence with every uncontested pass.
Exactly. The tactical change of going to a back five, it wasn't just a physical shift on the pitch. It created a passive mindset, inviting pressure against a team that thrives on, intricate final third passing. It's tactical suicide.
So when you see how spectacularly that retreat backfired, it kind of forces you to look at the cards Thomas Tuchel left on the table.
Oh, absolutely.
If defensive substitutions inherently invite pressure, what does a proactive response actually look like? Like, how do you change the game without surrendering it?
Well, what's fascinating here is the language of substitutions.
The language of it.
Yeah. Football at the highest level is deeply psychological. Every time a manager makes a change, they're broadcasting a signal. They're communicating a message to their own players. And crucially, they are sending a message to the opposition.
It's like being in a high-stakes business negotiation.
How so?
Well, say you've been pushing hard, demanding better terms, dictating the flow of the room, but the second you signal to the other side that you're just trying to hold on to the current deal, that you're no longer trying to extract more value, the other side smells fear.
Oh, totally.
They know you've stopped trying to win the negotiation and you're just terrified of losing what's already on the table, so they lean in, they get aggressive.
That's a perfect way to look at it. A defensive substitution tells the opposition, hey, we have no more problems for you to solve. We're just going to brace for impact.
Yeah.
But an attacking substitution says, you might have the ball, but we can still hurt you. And the source actually outlines some incredibly specific, proactive moves Tuchel could have made to send that second message.
Okay, let's go through those. Let's start with the striker position. Because Harry Kane had run himself into the ground, pressing the Argentine defense. But by the 70th minute, he was visibly exhausted.
Yeah, he was spent.
He couldn't offer an outlet anymore. And the source points out that Ollie Watkins was sitting right there on the bench.
The mechanics of that potential substitution are just massive. Because think about it. Christian Romero and Lisandro Martinez, Argentina's center backs, were both already on yellow cards.
Oh, right.
That changes a defender's entire psychology.
Yeah.
They cannot commit to a cynical tactical foul to stop a counterattack without risking a red card. So if you bring on Ollie Watkins, you introduce this fresh, blistering pace, running directly at two defenders who have to second-guess every single tackle.
Wow. It completely flips the risk assessment for Argentina. Suddenly, they can't throw their fullbacks forward with reckless abandon because they are terrified of Watkins isolating their center backs in a foot race.
Yep. They would have to keep an extra man back.
Yeah.
It naturally relieves the pressure on the English defense without actually having to add a defender.
That's so smart.
And the same logic applies to the midfield. Jude Bellingham had emptied the tank, covering enormous distances to link the play.
Yeah, he was everywhere. So instead of asking an exhausted Bellingham to keep sprinting box to box, the source argues Tuchel could have dropped him slightly deeper alongside Elliot Anderson.
Right.
And that provides fresh legs to win the ball back and retain possession. And then, in the space Bellingham vacated, you bring on Eze.
Eze is exactly the kind of player who thrives in the chaos between the opposition's midfield and defense.
Just floating in.
Yeah, if Argentina is pushing forward to find an equalizer, they're leaving gaps behind their midfield. And Eze is a specialist at receiving the ball on the half-turn in those exact pockets of space. He forces the Argentine midfielders to look over their shoulders instead of just looking forward.
And finally, you've got Morgan Rogers, who was relentless all game, but eventually ran out of steam.
Right.
So instead of bringing on a defensive player to replace him, you have Marcus Rashford or Bukayo Saka ready to go.
Think about that for a second. If you put Bukayo Saka high up on the wing, isolating an Argentine fullback, it acts as a permanent deterrent.
The deterrent, yeah.
The opposing fullback cannot overlap and join the attack because they know that the second they lose the ball, Saka will expose the space they left behind. So just imagine a refreshed attacking structure of Rashford, Watkins, Eze, and Saka.
That structure demands respect. It tells Argentina, if you overcommit, we will end this game. But instead, the message sent was one of pure survival. And we heard it from Lionel Scaloni, the Argentina manager. He was brutally honest in his post-match press conference. He literally said, there was blood in the water and we went for it.
Blood in the water, I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the psychological shift.
Yeah.
The moment England switched to a back five, the possession statistics became incredibly one-sided.
Just totally skewed.
Between Anthony Gordon's goal and Lautaro Martinez's eventual winner, Argentina controlled almost the entire match. England just surrendered the initiative, hoping their structure could withstand wave after wave of elite attacking talent.
You know, you could easily lay all of this at Thomas Tuchel's feet.
It's tempting, right?
It is tempting to blame a single manager for a single tactical misstep. But the source makes a really compelling systemic argument that this is not a Tuchel problem, this is a historical pattern.
Oh, big time. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this exact scenario played out repeatedly under Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
It happened in the Euro 2020 final against Italy. It happened against Croatia in the 2018 World Cup semifinal.
It's crazy when you list them out like that.
Right. We're talking about different generations of players,
Yeah.
coaching staffs, different tactical setups, but the exact same psychological outcome. The issue clearly runs far deeper than any one decision made on the touchline.
Yeah, the source traces this pattern back to an overwhelming, almost suffocating focus on results rather than process.
Yes, that's key.
They compare England's approach to major tournaments with other elite footballing nations. Like, when Spain takes a lead, they don't retreat. They continue passing the ball, trusting their possession-based identity to dictate the game.
Right. And Germany traditionally continues imposing their structure. France continues utilizing their devastating transitions.
Exactly. Their core identities remain completely stable regardless of whether it's the 10th minute or the 89th minute. But England's default setting is to ask, how do we protect what we have? Instead of, how do we continue controlling this game?
One mindset is focused on actively influencing the environment, and the other is merely reacting to it, trying to survive it.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because I think a lot of people might look at that and say, wait a minute, winning a World Cup is the ultimate goal.
Right.
It is a knockout tournament where literally only the scoreline matters. By definition, it is a results business.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't a team be entirely focused on the result in those dying minutes? I mean, it feels counterintuitive to prioritize a philosophical process when you are 20 minutes away from a World Cup final.
It does feel counterintuitive. The natural human instinct when you have something incredibly valuable in your hands is to curl up and protect it.
Right.
But this raises an important question about how human beings perform under extreme stress. When you focus solely on the result, the thought loop of we must not lose this lead, we must get to the final, you actually activate a fear-based protective mindset. Your brain is entirely occupied by what you stand to lose.
Ah, you're staring at the clock and the scoreboard, paralyzed by the fear of a mistake, rather than actually playing the game that got you the lead in the first place.
Exactly. You stop making the daring passes. You stop making the aggressive runs. But when you maintain a relentless focus on the process, like, we need to keep making these specific runs to stretch their defense, we need to keep triggering our press in these specific zones, you are focusing on the tangible actions that actually generate the result.
That makes a lot of sense.
The greatest teams in the world, they don't simply chase score lines. They build a tactical and psychological identity that is robust enough to survive pressure.
Because pressure strips away all the pleasantries, doesn't it? It strips away the pre-match tactical diagrams on the whiteboard.
It does. The author hits on a brilliant point here, and it's that pressure doesn't create a defensive mentality. It reveals it.
Wow, it reveals it.
Yeah. In those frantic final 20 minutes, the crushing weight of the occasion didn't change who England was. It just stripped away the rehearsed plans, it bypassed their conscious preparation, and it left them with only their deepest, most ingrained habits.
And when the pressure peaked, Argentina's ingrained habit was to try to win the football match, while England's ingrained habit was to try not to lose it.
Right. There was an ocean of difference between those two mentalities.
Yeah.
Trying to win requires courage. Trying not to lose is driven by fear.
It's the gap between a champion and a runner-up.
Absolutely. Argentina wasn't simply better because they had Messi or McAllister. They were better because their underlying organizational habit, when their backs were entirely against the wall, was to continue trying to impose their will on the game. They trusted their process more than they feared the result.
So for you listening right now, I really want you to think about how this framework applies far beyond a football pitch.
It really does translate to everything.
Think about your own life, your own career, your own high-pressure moments. Maybe you're prepping for a massive presentation at work, the kind of pitch that could secure a huge client or make or break a promotion.
We've all been there.
Yeah. Or maybe you're dealing with a sudden chaotic crisis in your personal life. When the stakes are at their absolute highest, when you can physically feel the pressure mounting in your chest, what do? Do you retreat?
Do you pull back?
Right? You pull back, minimize your risk, and just try to protect what you already have? Or do you lean into your preparation, continue to play with courage, and push forward?
It's a profound question to ask yourself. And the fundamental lesson here is universal. Until you build an identity, a process that survives pressure, you will always revert to your deepest habits. You can't just hope you'll magically find the courage to be brave when the moment arrives. In elite sports, in boardrooms, in life, pressure strips away your rehearsed plans. You have to actively build the habit of bravery into your daily process so that when the stress tester clamps down, your default reaction is to step forward, not backward.
Like the structural engineer testing the materials. You can't fake structural integrity when the weight comes down. The stress tester doesn't lie.
No, it reveals exactly what you are made of.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a single substitution in a World Cup semifinal, right? Breaking down the tactical mechanics of a back five.
And we've ended up uncovering a generational psychological block that has basically haunted a footballing nation for decades.
We really did. But there is one final thought from the source material that really lingers, and I want to leave you with this to mull over long after you finish listening.
It's a great point to end on.
Yeah, the author specifically mentions the year 1966. That is a 60-year drought for the England men's national team. 60 years of intense national obsession.
The pressure is just unimaginable.
60 years of screaming newspaper headlines, of agonizing penalty shootout defeats, of golden generations falling short. It is a crushing, almost suffocating weight of history. So when an entire nation, the media, the fans, the players themselves, are obsessively, desperately fixated on the result of ending that 60-year drought, does the immense weight of that history actually prevent a team from building the very process-focused identity they need to achieve it? Does the sheer desperation for the trophy create an environment so paralyzed by the fear of failure that it becomes the exact thing keeping the trophy out of reach?
It's a fascinating paradox.
It really is. The harder you grip the result, the faster the process slips through your fingers. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.